there are 4.5 million podcasts out there. And so you're probably going to get lost unless you do something to stand out. And one thing is what you're talking about, multiple platforms. Maybe you catch fire on a platform.
What's your take on that, Utopia? I know that sometimes you're on Twitch and everything like that. So do we need to be more engaged in our multiple platforms and everything like that along those lines? Or your thoughts around this notion of multiple platforms? I'm even thinking like with Sasha's show that if he put some of those games that he and Ken and Dan Fleetwood wrote an article about them, that might be going toward the audience and people want to hear more of the further details about hearing the show.
So you're asking me if Pod TV should do what all the other influencers are doing and having basically the snippet pieces here on YouTube and TikTok and all the other places, rather than just doing one giant interview or one hour-long discussion. So you're asking me if we should do the same thing everybody else is doing that actually makes it? I mean...
Yeah, that's what I was asking, because actually I do that on some of the shows. I know that
you said do.
Yeah. But I do put them on TikTok, and I do put them on Instagram, because you can do clips on Instagram, you can do clips on TikTok, you can do them, and I know a lot of the other podcasters, that's what they're doing. That's what all the brand, which is
all of them. I mean, all the other successful podcasters out there, all of them have the various social medias.
Right.
They place their clips on the various social medias. They have the raw footage of whatever they're marketing onto your YouTubes and everything else. What the guy what the person said, Cat and Jack said is spot on. More people watch shorts than they do an hour long.
Right.
So we're sitting here doing an hour long thing. So if we did, short little clip, maybe a minute. That's why Facebook on their stories limits you to a minute. Same thing with other places will limit you to a particular amount of time. More people watch those than they do an hour long or whatever podcast, unless they're into that individual. If they're a follower, they're gonna watch it. But if they're just your casual fan and you're trying to pick up more people, you got to do more clips. You got to do more things.
We should also call it Go-Go News and add a Go-Go girl and occasionally a Go-Go guy. We've got 6 frames up here. One of the frames should be somebody in a bikini dancing. I
don't want to see none of y'all in a bikini.
No, none of us.
No, none of us. You're talking about like an actual woman. Hey, Rick, one of the problems that exists even with your show and everything like that, and I've been meaning to figure out a way to do it. I do have some editing tools that I can do it. But one of the problems is that your show is probably, my show is guilty of it as well, is one of the longer ones, because your show is actually, because we're doing back-to-back episodes, is actually 4 hours long when we're doing Naked at Night.
That's not good.
And I can't trim those because the StreamYard makes a 2-hour limit. So we'd actually almost have to do 2 separate shows.
Nobody's going to watch for 4 hours. Nobody's going to even watch we found that people hear that we have a woman in a bikini on our show, they check in, they're gone within 30 seconds. A lot of people. So, you can't even have just somebody in a bikini. They have to be dancing. And
let's put them in a Pokemon. To answer the question, everybody's favorite Pokemon is probably Pikachu. You got Jigglypuff. I like Jigglypuff. He puts people to sleep. I do have a Kirby shirt. Kirby's one of my also favorite. Greninja is also cool because he's great in Smash Brothers. Do that little fast little moves and stuff. So Squirtle. Just because I have a dirty mind.
And somebody said, then they get asked this morning in their live stream. So apparently they had a live stream that they were asking about the Pokemon and everything like that.
Samoa's stuff.
Yep, I got that right there. Give me.
Hey,
Squirtle, because I'm 5 years old and the name sounds so dirty.
It does sound dirty. Yeah, definitely. Chris, what's your take on this?
Let's go back to Warner Brothers for a second.
Yeah.
Actually, Rick, I did want to touch with you on Warner Brothers thing, because yes, there is that battle now. The thing with Netflix, if Netflix were to get Warner Brothers, that would be huge because that's a big battle against Disney now. Because now you have Disney who pulled all the superhero movies or superhero shows from Netflix. That actually Netflix did better with the superhero shows than Disney has. Even though Disney has done a great job, the Netflix series of Daredevil was still top of the line. Same thing with the Punisher. What they would have their hands on, because DC and Marvel, DC was more, their comics are a little bit more kind of tethered to reality than what Marvel's are.
Mhm.
Marvel's are a lot more bright and colorful and imaginative, but DC has a little bit more dark in it. If you take a look at their main characters, Spider-Man and Batman, that tells you everything.
Yeah.
But if Netflix gets it, what they could do with that whole thing would be amazing. But also there's a jinx around DC Comics.
Well, I don't know. I like James Gunn, who's currently in charge of the DC universe. He does crazy stuff. He also respects the canon, which I don't care that much about, but it actually helps the quality of the product. You know,
I agree with that. I really agree with that.
We're going to have just more of this consolidation.
So what we have is a bidding war for Warner Brothers. What we want is a content war, which we had in 2020, where all the streamers were struggling for dominance by making a ton of stuff. And we haven't had that since. The people haven't been making much, which is terrible for people who make stuff, and it's also terrible for viewers. So I'm hoping out of this we get some kind of production war. If a war between Netflix and Disney erupts where they try to outmake each other, that would be awesome.
That would be for the industry. I think if Netflix does get Warner Brothers, because when HBO initially had Game of Thrones and all the other things around Game of Thrones, there were multiple shows going on. Like even Max had Warrior, and Warrior was a phenomenal series that was based on Bruce Lee's screenplay, which was just beautiful. It was the way they directed it and everything. And it felt like an old school Kung Fu movie. But again, there were a ton of other shows that they were willing to toss money out at. But because of the money, and now that we're back at the world of, hey, you got to make a dollar, that had killed a lot of the creatives. However, Netflix has been doing a decent job with some of their allowing for creatives. Like Three Body Problem wouldn't have happened.
Great show.
Yep, great show. Honestly, even hate to point out, Stranger Things.
Also, the head of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, loves content, apparently, compared to the head of Warner Brothers, David Zaslav, who loves money. There was 1 year where David Zaslav made $400 million. And that was that the same year that he decided not to release Batgirl, even though it was already made for tax reasons. So if we can replace a Zaslav with a Sarandos, that's good for everybody.
I mean, did you ever, like, there are so many shows on Netflix that, like, Love, Death, and Robots. Phenomenal show. If you haven't watched it, definitely sit down and watch it because of the animation that they put into
the
that.
animation is awesome. The plot could be a little better. The animation is freaking amazing.
And because you don't have to watch them in order, and you can just, except for two of them, but the one with the cats that took off.
Yeah.
The cats and the robots. Everybody loved that. But everything else, you can watch whatever position you want to.
They're all.
And there are some that are,
even if the plot is crappy, all you have to do is watch for 8 more minutes of great animation, even though the plot's kind of dumb. Black Mirror is the science fiction series king of all of them, queen of all of them, best plots.
And also, if you look at honestly, Amazon is slowly stepping into that whole void of creativity. And I have to applaud Amazon for that because of what they did with Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. That was never going to happen from any other studio other than Netflix, but it wouldn't have gone to the scale that it did. Don't get me wrong.
Right. So everybody was taking big swings in
Mhm.
2020. And by a big swing, I mean spending $2 billion on an 8-episode limited series. If we can start getting more of that, or even just a lot of series that only cost, $100 million each, but you got to get them to open up their pocketbooks. Sydney Sweeney, the blonde bombshell girl, started doing a bunch of ads, including one that caused a fake controversy. And people
it was a fake controversy. Hey, Rick,
let me finish up. Let me finish the story. People are like, why are you doing all these stupid ads? And she goes, well, I get paid handsomely for movies, but I have an agent, I have a manager, I have an accountant, I have lawyers, and all those people cost money, and I don't make enough money to get by making movies. And residuals have gone away, and that's why I have to do all these ads. I used to get, every time a Kimmel show reran, I would get a check for $350. Now, when a Kimmel show reruns, and of course I haven't worked there in like 12 years, I get a check for literally 2 pennies, 2 cents. That's a 99.99% discount off my previous rate. And that's everybody. That's why Sydney Sweeney is doing these ads, because the money has been squeezed out into the pockets of the CEOs and away from the people who make content.
Yeah,
Interestingly enough, Sydney Sweeney did just make a comment talking about how she feels that she should have spoken up with the fake controversy and stuff like that.
Yeah, she should have spoken up on that.
What goes on from there, but that also could be another ploy. But give her the benefit of the doubt on that, and just say, hey, if she's going to speak up more on these controversies that could be a problem, then she was honest in what she was saying.
Yeah, because actually, Jatovia, there's a woman in Charlotte that actually is the creator, to Rick's point, of one of the popular shows. It was on for many years on Fox TV and everything like that. And I don't think I asked her how much she made, but she made some money when it was first came out, because the lady that wrote Bones, the Temperance Brennan series, I actually had the pleasure of interviewing her last Wednesday, but she definitely made some money as a after all that series. I think the series is now on its 27th or 28th novel, but that's what made the Bones series.
Point. So people in entertainment get criticized for being elitist, for being woke, for not being woke in Sydney Sweeney's case, but across entertainment, the most successful people are biased in favor of getting shit made.
Yeah, that's what she was like.
Politics takes a back seat to, it's hard enough to get shit made that people who are good at their jobs do not compound it by being ride or die for political points.
But you say that, but one of the major distributors, coming back to consolidation, is this whole notion of Sinclair. And it's my understanding that Sinclair is
Sinclair
hold a second, they own 179 stations, but now they're trying to acquire EW Scripps. And I never heard of Scripps as being overly political. And then they would be, if that acquirement takes place, then they'd have a significant amount of the population of broadcast communications. And so they started trying to do something similar.
Sinclair has an agenda. They're not a traditional content provider. Sinclair buys up cheap local TV stations with local news broadcasts, and then they require the local stations to broadcast politically biased messaging. Not 30 minutes every report, but they require them to do like editorials. And so that's a different thing. That's like a Fox News model. But
then they seem like they're having a contradiction, because Sinclair is buying up. It looks like they're trying to buy up Scripps, and Scripps owns a variety of entertainment stations, including Ion, which is definitely Ion is more like regular dramas and everything. But they also are buying up Bounce. So Sinclair buying up Bounce, buying up a competitor to BET, because isn't Bounce BET?
Scripps is a dying media organization. 50 years ago, Scripps was a thriving newspaper empire.
Right.
Then they saw the writing on the wall saying, well, newspapers are dying. We got to move into other stuff. Their move into other media is not entirely successful. So I'm sure that Scripps is limping along and that they're available at a huge discount compared to the value that Sinclair will get once they own them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just had a brilliant idea, and Sasha may not like it and everything, but one of the things that is very popular are animal memes. I know that Toby's got a dog over there. I think Rick's got a dog where he's at, and I don't have a dog, but my brother does it and everything. But these cat and dog memes are very popular and everything. So I'm thinking, Sasha, maybe we have to have a chess show where it's the cat or the dog playing chess, and you and the other people are making the comments behind, and that could be a unique show that maybe would get the young people to watch that may not watch it otherwise. So would you be open to a animated show with cats and dogs playing chess?
It remains to be seen if all these people who are new to chess will come to the show and enjoy it just because of cats and dogs. I think maybe for them it would be better to have actual show cats and dogs, and they would enjoy it much more than the same thing with a chess involved. Now, on the other hand, people who like chess show and are watching every week, they could be turned off by introducing cats and dogs, because that is very different ideas. Although I must say that promoters, especially when they're trying to promote to new events, such as recently, actually today, they started a new chess tournament. It's actually freestyle chess in South Africa, in Cape Town. So they introduce a novelty where they show the pictures of well-known grandmasters who are participating in this tournament. They are playing underwater chess. So there's a board underwater, so they have to dive and make their move and then get to back to the air. Now, interestingly enough, one of the competitors, he was somewhat overweight, and he had a great difficulties to stay underwater for any considerable period of time, because he would dive underwater and he would be immediately flying back.
Yeah, because
So he had to maneuver.
Just to point out, just wanted to point out real quick, Sasha, there is an actual cats and dogs playing chess on YouTube. It happened years ago, but that was, if you go to their YouTube page right now, there's 73,000 views.
Well, all we need to do is put up better backgrounds. Dr. Sharif is the only one of us who has a background that isn't really. Dr. Sharif is not floating in orbit, really. All we have to do is put up Girls Gone Wild behind our heads, or Cats and Dogs behind our heads. Just put up some feed on a green screen. I want to go back to Scripps for a second. So I looked up some stuff. They own 60 local TV stations, and they also own ION. ION is is programming for old people. They put on all the CSIs. They put on
the old shows.
They have a huge old people captive market, and they're being Sinclair is trying to buy them for $620 million, which I think is a pretty good deal to get all that. They also own Court TV. They're in 40 U.S. markets. It's a good deal for Sinclair.
Yep. Well, speaking of good deals and social media and everything like that, it looks like social media, and maybe Jatovia will jump back on. I know he's had some family stuff to deal with and everything along those lines, but it looks like even the networks are starting to get picked up by social media. I think NBA or NFL is carried by YouTube, and Major League Baseball just announced a new media rights deal with the standard ones, NBC, NBC, ESPN, but they also got Netflix. So some of these games will be shown on Netflix. So it looks like there are some social media outlets that are also picking up some of our major.
Yeah, and you can dress them up. Nickelodeon picked up the NFL, and a Nickelodeon viewer could give a crap about football. A Nickelodeon viewer is a 9-year-old kid. but they used AI to replace all the players with Pokemon. So a 9-year-old kid would love to watch a live NFL game where the players are all Pokemon. So you can do all sorts of stuff with AI now to tailor a sports broadcast for the demographic of each channel.
Let's what I'd like to do is, I'd like to switch channels to back to the infrastructure where we talked about that in the beginning. I think that we talk about this is the congressional report on the corporate for public broadcasting's federal appropriation, and 89 plus 6 plus 5 equals 100%. So that's basically what they are looking at right now from the standpoint of the type of allocation that was originally with the corporate for public broadcasting. But there's a couple of things when we talk about infrastructure, and we centered on that because, of course, we're in broadcasting areas. But I think when we talk about infrastructure, period, right, and we talk about communication, and we talk about all those things that go along with that, it's interesting to note that while I was in Europe, I went to Czech Republic, and when I was at the Czech Republic, we were doing some sightseeing, and our tour guide said, what are these metal? It looks like they're metal strips along the one area of the cobblestone. And she said, that is flood mitigation. And I said, what? And she goes, yeah, basically what happens is when the river reaches a flood stage, there are metal sheets that rise up, and people that live around that area bring out supports, and they support that metal sheet, and that will in fact hold the waters back. And it's been tested a number of times. And I said, so in other words, what you're telling me is that there was flooding here. She said, oh yes, there was flooding here, like every other year we had flooding. And I said, well, how much property has been lost as a result of this flood mitigation being? She goes, zero. Every time there's flooding, we put these walls up, it's done, and then we move on from there. And I sit back and I go, it's really interesting how, we sit back in North Carolina and we sit back and we say, we have to rebuild houses. We have to rebuild houses. Got to rebuild the houses. We got to rebuild the roads. We got to get our roads rebuilt. So they rebuild the roads. They put all the roads in. And guess what happened? It got washed out because instead of planning and mitigating the flood possibilities or the erosion possibilities, they just built the road. And this is what happens with the housing and with whatever else is happening. If you take a look at the data, even from Maryland, Ellicott City is a perfect example of what happens when all you do is you build back instead of mitigating the flood approaches that are there to begin with. Rick, you can put your hand down. You've had enough talk today. Right, so basically what's happened is that we've had a situation where the mitigation aspect is number 3, number 4, number 5 priority over let's get the people back in their houses. They get the people back in their houses, and then then it happens again. And it's going to happen again because they don't have the right mitigation that needs to be done in order to make that a preventable occurrence rather than anything else. And I think what Rick was saying from the standpoint of, Sinclair and all the other things that go along with that is we in this country do not have a viable infrastructure of communication. We don't. It is basically shotgun through with a bunch of ADHD people that cannot be influenced or they can't go past a 30-second to 1 minute before they have to go someplace else and see something else. They cannot focus for a matter of 30 seconds to 1 minute to be able to learn something. Hell, I can't learn something in a minute. If I can't learn it in a minute, moving on to something else. Influencers, marketers. And you know what they market, Jacoby? They market themselves. Their product is them. That's what they do. Influencers market themselves, and they put it out there as much as you want. You want a Trump hater? Fine. You go find a Trump hater. And let me tell you, people that are other Trump haters are going to watch the Trump hater. People that are, look at Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's a perfect example of marketing himself. He was, hey, look, I'm a conservative. This is what I'm going to do. All of a sudden, conservatives flock to this guy because they think like him. He marketed the product. Okay, I'm done. Go for it.
All right, Jacoby, then me, maybe.
Go ahead.
Just so influencers become influencers because people follow them. It's not that
They market themselves because, you know, you said this last time, Jacoby, and I didn't challenge you on this. They market themselves. They are the product. You follow them because they are the product, right?
But the thing is, you're making it an either or. Two things can be correct at the same time. Influencers, yes, do market themselves. We'll take basketball players, for example.
Sure.
LeBron James is not out there marketing, hey, look, go watch Bam Adebayo. No, he's talking about come watch himself. But that does not mean that people are still not going to follow him because they want to follow him. So saying that it's an either or situation is false. It's actually a yes on both. Yes, influencers are going to sell themselves because what are you buying in the first place? You're buying that influencer. So
That's
when
right.
you watch that influencer, you're buying whatever they're selling. That's just a natural thing. That's following a leader. That's
Absolutely.
nothing different than hey, look, I'm a fan of this politician. That politician's still selling themselves. So it's not.
That's
to
right.
make it
Right.
sound as if it's something bad. It's not. It's just natural.
No.
Well, then
Yeah.
And another
one issue is demographics. I looked
Well-
up the Czech Republic, 11 million people. That's 1/30. The U.S., you can get unity. They can come up with solutions. The U.S., 340 million people.
50, but yeah.
And what you can get if you rile up the people. Like you look at DeSantis, governor of Florida, they have a rebuilding problem where the ocean is sweeping away stuff, but he goes to war with Disney because he gets 20, 30 million followers for doing culture war stuff instead of coming up with like a put your house on frickin' stilts solution.
Well, that also plays into what I was going to get to. It plays into the fact that a lot of it's those influencers have their own agendas.
Mm-hmm.
Ron DeSantis doesn't care about global warming or anything else, but yet he's going to push whatever he can to get his people to follow him. So influencers have their own agenda, regardless. I mean, even here, we all have our own agendas. We have our own positions that we want to push and push out first and foremost. So when we get into these battles and everything else, it's the same thing in society where people themselves, you have an influencer who lives 100 miles down the road. You have an influencer who lives 300 miles down the road. We may not all agree on the same thing, but who's going to grab the largest population to believe what they're saying? And an easy way to grab that population, you know, that man 100 miles down the street, you know what he's trying to do to you? So I'm not giving you the education around, hey, look, this is how we're going to, as you brought up the example about building in the floodplain and the houses not being built correctly and so on and so forth. I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you about, hey, look, this is what this person's going to try and do. He's trying to take your money. Well, you know what the reality of the situation is? To fix those homes in the correct manner costs money. You don't want to hear about paying money. You don't. Nobody wants to understand that taxes are a good thing. Taxes actually pay for the things that we need. Taxes actually fix the roads, fix the internet, and so on and so forth. Taxes affect us all around in every single way. Socialism is bad. Do you realize that we live in a quasi-socialist society in the first place? Social Security, for goodness sake, is socialism. Every police department, every fire department, every army, every service, every public service that we do is socialism. But we don't want to hear that. We want to hear these words to demonize the other group instead of educating people, because it's much easier to drive people to the polls and to gain power through fear and anger rather than it is to, hey, look, let's really talk about building and actually what we have to do. And let me be honest about the actual position here, because it's going to cost you a lot more to build this floodplain so your home won't wash away than it's actually going to, than we really want to really have that discussion about. So so the problem isn't just about the person's attention span. The problem is about what the person talking is trying to push. and
but
what
they're
the person really wants to feel and wants to care about. Because I don't want to talk about bills and money. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, also, one more thing. Czech Republic is the size of West Virginia. We're a big country. So Czech Republic they all have kind of geographically, they've got mostly the same interests. But try to convince somebody in Idaho why they should keep paying for floods in North Carolina. It's tough to
I think you forget, Rick, and this is that the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Ukraine, well, all those are part of the European Union, which is the United States of Europe. Basically,
Okay.
They have one president, and that president determines which country is going to get which area according to the members and what they're doing. So even though what you say is correct, is that you have a country, and that country has 11 million, I take a look at someplace like, I don't know, Canada. Canada has what, 83 million? And
40
yet
million. 40 million.
they have 40 million people in Canada. So 40 million people in Canada, we're talking about how many? 7 times, 8 times that? And yet they have a single payer, health insurance and all that stuff. And they go, oh, this is great. Well, that's great for them. But would it work down here? I do not think a single payer is going to work down here. Not with 350 million people.
Real quick, though, the reason to push back on that, a single payer actually would work down here. Every other country, even the countries that are larger than us, from China and the other places, they all have a single payer too. So what we end up doing is trying to demonize the situation rather than actually figure out a way to make the solution work. That's where we run into those problems. It's going to cost more money to change the system over, sure. But in the long run, does that give us a better health outcome if an individual can easily walk into, if you're visiting way out in Washington, the state of Washington, if you can just walk into a hospital there, if you're just having a cold, wouldn't that be cheaper than you having to have that cold grow within you? You come home, make everybody else sick. Now that's more money that you're having to spend out to get these other individuals in your home fixed. But rather than you taking care of it way out there in Washington when you were visiting places. So having a single payer,
you might be able to do single payer for catastrophic. Like if you get in a car wreck, if you get cancer, and it's going to cost you $250,000 after your medical bills hit $12,000, then single payer kicks in.
I disagree. I don't think it has to be catastrophic, because when you're looking at catastrophic, what is catastrophic? It's a subjective term. But
it's not defined. It really isn't defined. You're right, Jatovy. From a data point of view, yeah. It's
so other countries taking into the data. What we can have is a baseline coverage. Figure out what that baseline coverage could be across the board. That includes catastrophic, but also that baseline coverage. Other countries have figured out a baseline coverage that we can work with. Most insurance companies have a baseline that we can actually negotiate with. Outside of that, then do like a Australian, even Canada has a supplemental insurance plan that you can buy into. Other countries
for 40 million, yeah.
Yeah,
for 37.06 million or whatever it is. Yeah. And it's a fair one for them, right? It works out for them.
It works for them and everything like that. Speaking of which, and really quickly coming back to media discussion and everything along those lines, there is a popular group that is growing in viewership more so than the rest of the population. And I was actually reading an article while y'all were debating about copays and stuff along those lines, but it is the Latin population, and they are growing in population and everything like that. We actually have a Latin show here on the network, Que Pasa Mujer, that explores the Latin composition and the Latin environment, both in terms of politics and business and everything else like that. But I was just wondering, do we need to, as a network, to reach out more to the Latin population, because it is one of the growing populations. They currently make up 20% of the U.S. population, and they wield more than $4.1 trillion in purchasing power. So I don't know, do we need some data shows on the Latin American community? Do we need a Latin American person on our chess show? I don't know if there are Latin American masters in chess and everything like that. I don't know enough about chess to know that or not, but do we need to appeal to that growing market? Because apparently they are actually increasing while the rest of the populations are declining in viewership.
Well, I got to tell you, with the last name of Greco, I can't. At one point, I was getting a magazine, Hispanic magazine, and I thought, why am I getting Hispanic magazine? And it's like, because my last name is Greco, and people could not tell the difference between Greco being Italian and Greco being Hispanic. So I was getting Hispanic magazine, I was getting Hispanic newsletters, I was getting Hispanic. So basically, I thought, well, hey, if they want to play that game, you know, and I'm sure that the Italians in my area, which is down in Calabria, you know, my grandfather's area down in Calabria, they probably came from Spain anyways. So, you know, hey, we'll play the game where, you know, hey, I'll be a quasi, you know, Hispanic Latin American, if that's the way I want to go.
Your hand and Rick and everything. But even the Nielsen report found that Hispanic consumers are leading the nation in streaming consumption. So right now they are the ones that are dominating streaming and everything along those lines.
And also, I'm sorry, Rick, please. I'm sorry. Please, Rick.
65 million Latino people in the U.S., 1/5 of the population. Also, with AI providing seamless dubbing into whatever language you want. Now, like, you can, it used to be annoying to watch Spanish language stuff and having to read the subtitles. Now, seamless translation, it's not a pain in the ass at all. So yeah, the Spanish language stuff, we should look at the world like for Money Heist out of Spain. Great show, highly watchable.
Yeah, you're right. It is. Yeah.
What you have to do is you have to cater to and not pander to. And there is a line with that.
Accommodate. Is that what you're saying, Jacoby? Accommodate?
No, you have to, if you're going to cater to the Hispanic community, find out what the Hispanic community wants.
I see.
Get requirements. Throwing a person onto Sasha's chess show that's Hispanic is pandering.
Right.
There's a difference in what you're doing. And you just have to figure out what your show is, what you're trying to do. You have to be able to cater to, so you find out what the Hispanic community wants. If the Hispanic community would love to have an individual, because I think on world politics, the Hispanic community should have a voice in world politics. But in terms of, I'm not saying that they don't have a voice in chess. What I'm saying is that's not what the show is about. It's like saying, how people get mad at the gender or the race swapping or the culture swapping of different Marvel characters, to get back to media stuff. Right. The thing is,
you can't take Latino viewers, you can't take them for granted. It used to be in LA, we see a ton of Latino targeted advertising, and it used to suck ass, where an ad agency has 50 people coming up with clever advertising ideas. They used to have probably one or two Spanish-speaking people, and they throw these lame ads out there. It's like, here's what you get. You get crappy ads, but the people aren't going to stand for that anymore.
No, and that's the one thing I will say about Que Pasa Mujer. Hold on a second, because definitely Viviana targets the audience. She knows the audience because she is of Hispanic background. I know that her cousin's from Honduras. I think she's from Colombia, if I remember correctly. I might be having that wrong, but they are from Spanish. One of the other ones is from Puerto Rico, but they are from various Latin countries, and they bring that perspective. They talk about that $1 trillion worth of purchasing power they have, and they talk about issues that are pertinent to their community, whether that's banking, whether that's they've done stuff around Asian, they've done stuff on a number of shows, but it is pertinent to the community. It's probably one of our, it's on the feedback, is one of the more popular shows on the network. I just say that because I produce it on Sundays, and I just produced it yesterday and everything, but it is a lot of good feedback for it, because they are not pandering, to your point, Jatovi. They are actually people of that background and are talking about stuff that is of interest to their community and all along those lines. It's kind of like, but you can also bring up important issues, and then I'll wrap up on this note, because as you know, Jatovi, there was a friend, I think it's a friend of mine, I think it was a friend of yours as well, that did a very popular soap opera at the time. That soap operas were popular, but it was dealing with predatory lending, and that was Nostra Barrio. That was a popular soap opera that existed some 10 years ago here in this area that Dilsey did, and all along those lines. But they were trying to target a particular issue that they knew the Latin community was concerned about, because there were a number of people that were being victimized by predatory lending, but they turned it into a soap opera to bring the issue to the forefront.
Again, it's just, there's pandering, and then there's actual catering and actually doing the community justice.
Right.
So just throwing somebody onto a show because they're Hispanic, that's pandering, and that is insulting to every community, no matter if it's because that's happened to the black community a ton. Where, hey, look, there's a black guy.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a way to
There's a real thing, and I was only being
gauge
somewhat
this.
sarcastic
There's
when I
a
said
way
it.
to gauge this on Netflix, which is to look at who's getting a stand-up special. So as of last year, only 24% of the stand-ups on Netflix were female. And I haven't found the racial background, but I do know over the past few years, you're seeing more international voices, less just white guys. Now, there's some great white guy stand-up comedians, but there are great stand-ups of every demographic.
No, definitely.
Yeah, so I threw up this Google Trends because I think this goes back to Jacoby, right? So Jacoby, we got ourselves somebody who's really out there selling himself, right? Look at those trends. You got Sydney Sweeney, who's blue, right? And you have Ukraine, which is red, which is more than Sydney Sweeney. And then you got Trump. I haven't put Rick Rosen in here. Of course, he's not quite there. But
No,
and then you got Latino. I put Latino in there, which is a little bit more. It's almost as much as Sydney Sweeney here. But look at this. So this guy, look at him selling. He's selling himself. Look at this. Look at it. Look at this. It's crazy. So I mean, we sit back and we bust this guy, But let me tell you something. As far as marketing goes, look at this marketing. Look at Jacoby. I mean, good or bad, he's still out there, right?
I mean, the problem with that, again, we know that he has an influence on our society. We know he's an influencer. He only cares about himself.
Yeah.
We know that. But the problem is that it goes back to what I stated. What are they selling? When he's selling himself, he's selling, and this goes to what I guess Dr. Sharif was talking about with Dave and Nick. This man is out here having a huge influence on our society, but telling everybody that everybody from Somalia is trash, but telling everybody that all these propagandists, conspiratorial, all these bad things. So his influence on our society, as you're just pointing out there, is huge. And what he's selling to our society, which is when we talk about, well, we don't know why people are so mean these days. One of your biggest influences has pushed white supremacist propaganda. And you're asking why people are so mean. So that's all an issue. It's a huge issue. So you got to take everything into account.
So
I'm just curious about and I have to. I'm not going to push back. I'm just going to ask. Just help me understand. So you're saying that Trump is pushing white supremacist ideas. So I'm just curious. What are those white supremacist? What are those white supremacist ideas? I just need it.
One is that white farmers are being slaughtered. There's a holocaust of white farmers in South Africa, which is garbage if you look at the actual statistics coming out of South Africa. That Somalis are garbage. I mean, the Central Park Five. This goes back 35 years, were a bunch of black guys raping and murdering. He's got a history of that when he declared for the presidency in 2015, that Mexican immigrants are bad hombres, rapists, and murderers. He's got a long history.
Trump definitely has a long history of racism that's been there. A lot of people like to say, well, people like Trump to kind of turn a blind eye to his history from even going way back, even further than 35 years, talking about when he actually wouldn't rent to black people.
Yeah, that goes back to 1970.
Yeah, when he got sued for that. And that was what brought in the Housing Authority and a whole bunch of other stuff. So even today, like when he ran for presidency, he actually retweeted white supremacists. One of the biggest white supremacists out there is Laura Loomer. You know who has a direct phone line to Donald Trump? Laura Loomer. Do you know who's in the press briefings now? Laura Loomer. So there are, and then the stuff that he says, just as what Rick has pointed out, honestly, when he does this whole white replacement ideology that's out there, that's a big white supremacist push in the first place. The idea that they're coming in to take your land, that they're coming in to rape your women, and demonizing only people with melanin in their skin, from Hispanic individuals, Somali individuals, the white genocide, which Rick pointed out, there is no white genocide, but yet he's pushing that heavily. All these things. Stephen Miller is a known white nationalist, but a white nationalist is the same thing as a white supremacist. There's no difference.
No, let's talk about a good thing Trump does. He makes himself available just about every day. And he says a bunch of nonsense, and he maybe says some stuff that does make sense. And Fox News, everybody chops it up. He's like a Play-Doh extruder. Remember when you were a kid, you got that Play-Doh thing? Anyway, Fox News takes the good things he says, runs those. MSNBC runs the bad things, but he's always providing content, which is good. The biggest mistake frickin' Biden made was hide for 3-4 years, because he would stumble because he's got a stutter, and every time he spoke, Fox News would take the stumbles and string them together and show that he's not competent. Biden should have been braver. He should have gone out there and said, look, I'm old, I've got a stutter. So, but no, he hid.
So what you're saying is right. One thing that Biden did is he should have actually displayed and showed off like Trump, because that's what the society is buying into, the 15 seconds of fame or the 5 seconds of fame. Because that's what they like. Everybody wants to get on TV. Everybody wants to be on the camera. And that is true. And so Trump, because he's such an influence, as you can see, based on what Chris showed, that is where he is. And that's why he's always out there. But the problem comes into play as well, because when he's saying all this nonsense stuff, due to the fact he has such an influence and has such a backing that is so dedicated, diehard to him, you have people on places like you just pointed out, Rick, Fox News, that come and chop it up. They try and sanitize the lunacy that he says. And when they sanitize the lunacy, that sanitized portion is what gets parroted. They don't parrot the dumb stuff that he says when he says these things, talking about how there were airplanes in the Revolutionary War, and that's how we pushed back all this dumb stuff. And you can go even dumber when the man tried to give a blowjob to a microphone stand. So
all right, but he's been doing this for 30 years.
He's been doing this for years. He's a media person. Before we wrap up, anybody want to answer Liberty Switcher?
Yeah, I think let's get, first of all, I want to know how many people have visited the Horn of Africa in this group. How many people have actually been there for more than a month? I was there for 6 months. Somalia is the worst country in Africa from the standpoint of, I'm not saying that Somalis are bad. What I'm saying is the country itself is really, really, really distraught with a lot of different people that are bad people. If they're coming here and they're part of Al-Shabaab or part of whatever, and they're not vetted properly, then we have a real problem with that situation. I'm not saying that people here are part of Al-Shabaab. I'm just saying I dealt with that for 6 months.
But
it was
you're
bad.
You're talking about in Somalia. You're saying that this is happening in Somalia. But what about Ohio? Is that happening in Ohio? No.
Well, I don't know how many Somalis are in Ohio. They're basically in Minnesota.
There are Somalians in Ohio. There are also Somalis all throughout the U.S. But I'm
not saying they're bad. I'm just saying the country that they come from is bad.
But what Trump said is they are bad.
Did he say Somalis are trash?
Yes.
Wait a minute. If they come here, are they still Somalis, or are they naturalized citizens, or what are they?
Again, Chris, this is what you're doing.
Are they U.S. citizens? Are they not U.S. citizens?
Chris, listen.
It's like saying I'm Italian.
I'm trying to answer your question. Now,
so go ahead, Somalis. You're in Somalis things.
Let me finish.
Sorry, Somalis. Yeah.
when you move here and you still hold on to your heritage, just like anybody else, be it Italian, the Italian people who are Italian still say they're Italian. They don't
I don't, but yeah, you know, my descendants are.
So just
I don't.
because you don't doesn't mean that everybody does, Chris. You got to stop that. Just because it doesn't happen in your backyard doesn't mean that it doesn't happen in reality.
I'm trying not to generalize.
Let's get Sasha.
Let me finish the point real quick, and then we can jump to Sasha. The point is, the people in Ohio that are Somalian, that's who he called trash.
Did he say people in Ohio that are Somalis are trash?
Yeah,
Did he say those words? Did he say those words? He said Somalis in Ohio. Did he say that? Did he quote that?
Stop, Chris, you're not listening. I'm telling you the answer. I'm telling you, he said Somalian people are trash. They should not be
in Ohio.
Yes,
or in Minnesota. Everywhere in the United States. He said in the United States, Somalis are trash. He said those words.
Chris,
I'm just saying.
Yes. He said people. He said Somalis in America are garbage and should be kicked out of the country.
Yes, that's what he said, Chris.
Okay.
All right. What about Sasha? Because
I would like to suggest something much bigger than the Somali question. As you know, on Friday, there were published Trump's new security strategy, and there is a lot of talk about Europe's. And Trump suggests that in a few years, population of Europe, there will be more colored people and different religions people than white Europeans. So therefore, technically Europe is no longer part of the white Judeo-Christian civilization, and therefore US has no business to deal with Europe, support Europe, or do anything with Europe. But Trump is forgetting that US in a few years also may not be white Christian country as he thinks is a great achievement. So in that case, well, US will abandon US people, like same thing what he is now proposing to abandon any support to Europeans. How does it work?
Rick?
All right, so the people who get out of Somalia is a failed state. It's been a failed state for what, 20 years? It's controlled by gangsters, terrorists, warlords. You know, when I used to card people in bars, occasionally I would run into some hardcore, like just people who were like, what the hell is up with these people? They were people from Russia. When you look at what it took to get out of Russia in the 80s, you would have some tough people, some hard people. Is that good or bad for the country where they arrive? But it's the same deal. The people who have the balls and the wherewithal to get the hell out of a failed state have some characteristics, some good, some bad. They're not garbage. Now, the guy Twitcher, he said that 70% of Somalis are on welfare. No, not in America, but 42%, according to Google AI, get SNAP benefits. Now, it's a pattern. When people come newly to the U.S., they take social benefits, and then after a couple of years, they get off of social benefits. So I don't know if that's but anyway, not garbage.
The problem comes into play is that we try and justify his statement. Again, why can't we just say the statement was wrong and the statement is bad? That is my issue. Because what you're doing when you begin to justify the statement, well, hey, because Somalia is this, and no, now you're starting to put a target on individuals' backs, being from the position that you are. Not at one time did this man ever say that, oh, well, I'm not talking about these individuals. No, it's just the demonization of individuals from Somalia. Rather than actually just saying what he said was bad, don't justify it. Just say it's bad.
One more statistic, then I got to go. Somali Minnesotans generate at least $500 million in income annually and pay $67 million in state and local taxes. So they came there to
go and everything.
All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Even what they're saying about the fraud doesn't really make that much sense, because they're saying that it revolved around a welfare program that partnered with Minnesota Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to distribute meals to children. So it sounded like it was a meal program, and they're trying to make it into a fraud program. And I'm not saying there might not have been some fraud involved in there, but I think that it was probably less than what they are trying to make it out to be and everything like that, because it sounds like it was part of a greater meal program that they were involved with.
The problem comes again. Yeah, there's an issue and that happened, but that doesn't mean everybody. The problem comes into play is that individuals that jump down this rabbit hole and being hypersensitive about it, I guess that's what I'm being, because I should not have to answer for every wrong that every black person does. But that's the way it is. And that's the way this society has always been brought up. And that's what we're doing with the Somalian people, or the people from Somalia. That's what we're doing with a lot of the immigrants that come from Hispanic descent, that come from many South American countries. But we're not doing that with anybody coming from Denmark.
Yeah, we don't do it with Denmark, and I can even go deeper than that, because Chris, when he was here, and then we get ready to get out of here, he mentioned on several other shows of being of Italian descent, and I don't know anybody. I mean, a lot of people will have the stereotype of Italians being in the mafia, but I don't know anybody that thinks that every Italian is a member of the mafia
And also,
family.
real quick, this dude, Liberty Twitcher, I'm hoping he's still on, and you defend welfare scammers. That's the left. That actually makes no sense of what he's saying. The fact that he's trying to say that, oh, people are okay with crime, that is always a weak argument. That is the weakest thing you can do. We always try and start from a baseline that we agree that crime is bad. Everybody does. Nobody wants crime to happen. But the idea to sit here and try and say, well, only you do and I don't, it puts yourself on a glass plateau. And what happens when you stand on those glass plateaus or stanchions and stuff like that? They break. So no, nobody wants crime. Everybody wants to get crime out of that. So the idea that he wants to play the left and right game shows that he has no argument. But I would love to discuss and really come to some actual agreement that yes, it is wrong for a person to steal, but that doesn't mean everybody in that community is a person that steals. And if he believes that everybody in that community is somebody that steals things, then that goes further to tell what that individual truthfully is deep down in its own soul.
Not only that, but if I remember correctly, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, then we can definitely go get out of here and everything. I think a lot of police departments and a lot of the law enforcement, and I've got friends that have worked in that, including that cousin and everything like that, is technically supposed to be nonpartisan. Because a lot of the, not saying every state but in every city, but a lot of them aren't even on either the left or the right. They are trying to bring and be justice warriors that are worrying about solving crime, whether the person is on the Republican side or the Democratic side, left or right. Because I don't know I don't know the percentage, but I know quite a few of them in the country are nonpartisan.
Yeah, I mean, again, this gets into, the problem that I have. Everybody wants to blame a whole community. That's what Trump has done. He's gone out there and said it, that all Somalian people are trash. He's done that, which means that even no matter who that individual is, people who love Trump, people who believe Trump, will think anybody who looks Somalian is trash and will now treat them differently. That is ridiculous. And that is not what this society should be. So Liberty Twitcher, as you continue to comment, do you agree that we should not do that to communities? You can answer that question if you want to. Now, you can be honest and say we should not do that to people. Oh, you just did it. People who love Trump. Answer the question. Like how you're trying to change the subject. You're doing exactly what I said you're not supposed to do. Therefore, that says a lot about who you are. So again, we understand from this point on, you believe that individuals who come from Somalia are trash, Mr. Liberty Twitcher. That's what you are saying, just because Trump told you so, based on your comments. So therefore, I know where you stand now. I know that you see people with melanin in their skin and you get all hackles all built up just because you stated, and you would not agree that we should not do that to people in our community. Again,
by the way, I was wrong. It looks like sheriffs are mostly elected in partisan things. So it says sheriffs are popularly elected in 46 states, but only 6 of those use nonpartisan ballots for sheriff elections, meaning that the other 40 states have partisan races. But a study found that over a third, which is what I was thinking, of local law enforcement officers, including sheriffs, fall into a other unknown party category, indicating many aren't strictly identified with major parties. So it looks like that a number of them, at least a third, are non-party affiliated and are not trying to be party affiliated because they're trying to serve people of both parties and various races and everything like that. So definitely that is what was going on in the sheriff department. But I would argue that that might even be different in some of the other departments as well. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that still have to take place in terms of many different areas of our legal system. Or, I mean, there are problems that are there, and that still has to be fixed. Oh, but you need to generalize. No, I don't need to generalize. I just point out what you just stated and what you said. So, Mr. Liberty Twitcher, thanks for chatting. You just said exactly, again, you still cannot say what I pointed out, that we should not generalize. We should not attack society, attack groups and communities in the way that Trump did, because what Trump did was extremely bigoted. You can't say that. And I get it.
Yeah. And on that note, we're going to get on out of here. I know they're doing time sharing. We've got other shows coming up later on this evening as well. But right now it's time to get on out of here. Maybe Liberty Twitcher will show up in person and everything like that. I know we keep inviting different people. So Liberty Twitcher, if you ever want to show up.
Check this out, Mark. Hey, reach out to Liberty Twitcher. See if he wants to come on and debate. I'll debate him straight up. Because honestly, I get this delay in the typing and texting and everything else. But the problem is, he said what he said.
Yeah. So we'll see if Liberty Twitcher wants to come on. When it says, "Well, show up in person."
Oh, now he doesn't want to because he's afraid. Again, he's more than welcome to. More than welcome to.
Well,
Again, I would love here, Mark. Let's see this. Since he's typing so fast right now, Mr. Liberty Twitcher, can you agree that we should not generalize communities and put out bigoted statements about communities such as what Trump did? Can you state that?
We'll wait to see what he says, and then I'm going to play the here we come with Liberty Twitcher.
Oh, yes. I stated that. Answer the question now. Don't say I stated that. Just answer the question now. Is it obviously? I stated several times that it is wrong to generalize. Was the statement bigoted? Let's be honest. Was the statement bigoted?
He said he stands on what he said, whatever that is.
Come on, Mr. Liberty Twitcher. We're having fun now. Was the statement bigoted?
He said yes on that.
There we go. Now we agree. Now we can move forward. Yes, it's a bigoted statement. Trump.
And on that note, we'll get on out of here, and we'll have maybe Liberty Twitcher will show up on the show later on. Right now, let's get on out of here.